Dad's fork paused halfway to his mouth. So Kyra, still moving around? I smiled across the white tablecloth. Still serving, yeah? Must be exhausting, my sister Bethany said, not looking up from her phone. Never putting down roots, never building anything real. The restaurant hummed around us. Low Edison bulbs casting warm light on reclaimed wood walls, the scrape of silverware on porcelain, couples leaning into candlelight. It was the kind of place that charged $30 for a steak and called it rustic elegance. My brother Mitchell had chosen it. Of course he had. Kyra doesn't do real, Mitchell said, cutting his ribeye with surgical precision. She does, what is it again, logistics? Something like that, I said. Mom reached over and patted my hand. The gesture felt like an apology for my existence. We're just worried about you, sweetheart. You're 42. Most people your age have equity, retirement accounts. You're still renting that little place in... Where is it this year? Quantico. See? Bethany finally looked up. Quantico this year. Next year it'll be somewhere else. You're like a tumbleweed. I took a sip of water. The ice had already melted. This was the routine. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call that lasted longer than 5 minutes. Mitchell would mention his corner office at the consulting firm. Bethany would casually drop that she'd just closed another 7-figure real estate deal. Mom would talk about their houses, their spouses, their children, and then, like clockwork, the conversation would turn to me. Poor Kyra, still playing soldier, still pretending her little military career meant something. They didn't say it like that, of course. They wrapped it in concern, worry. But I could read between the lines. I'd been reading between the lines my entire adult life. The Marines are lucky to have you, Dad said, which was his version of changing the subject. He raised his glass. To our family, and to your mother and me, 40 years of putting up with each other. Polite laughter, a toast. The conversation moved on. I checked my phone under the table. 3 missed calls from my deputy chief of staff. A text from my senior aide, need you, urgent. Kyra, Mom's voice had that edge. No phones at dinner. Sorry. I set it face down on my lap. You're always sorry, Bethany said, but you're always doing it anyway. It's like you think whatever's happening in your little world is more important than being present with your family. Mitchell smirked into his wine glass. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to explain that the little world she was so casually dismissing involved 3,000 Marines, 600 civilian personnel, and a crisis unfolding in real time that could determine whether a training exercise became an international incident. I wanted to explain that the phone call I was ignoring wasn't from a needy boss. It was from a 1-star general asking for guidance. But I didn't. Because this was the game we played. They believed what they wanted to believe, and I let them. It was easier than explaining. Easier than watching them try to process information that contradicted the comfortable narrative they'd built about their disappointing younger sister. My phone buzzed again, then again. Kyra, I have to take this. I pushed back from the table. Excuse me? I made it to the hallway near the restrooms before answering. Stinson? Ma'am, we have a situation. Captain Reeves sounded like he was barely holding it together. The base commander just got a call from the Pentagon. There's a congressional delegation inbound tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, and they want a full facility tour and briefing. Someone leaked a training incident to the press. We need you back here now. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow was Sunday. My parents' actual anniversary. We were supposed to do brunch. How bad? CNN has a story going live in 2 hours. Marines under fire, training accident, or cover-up. That bad. Assemble the staff. I'll be there in 90 minutes. Ma'am, you're in. I know where I am, Captain. 90 minutes. I hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror. 42 years old, 24 years of service, colonel for 3 years, installation commander for 8 months. And still, somehow, the family disappointment. When I got back to the table, they were laughing about something Mitchell had said. The empty 4th chair, the one that had held my gift envelope, was still empty. They hadn't even opened it. Everything okay? Mom asked in the tone that really meant, can we please get through one dinner without your work interrupting? I have to go. Bethany rolled her eyes. Of course you do. I'm sorry, there's an emergency. There's always an emergency, Mitchell said. That's the problem with jobs like yours. No boundaries, no respect for personal time. In my firm, we have systems. We have people. We don't just drop everything because someone panics. I stood there, handbag in hand, looking at my family, at their comfortable assumptions, their satisfied smirks. I really am sorry, I said quietly. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. Dad waved me off. Go save the world, sweetheart. They laughed. Not meanly, exactly, just dismissively, the way you laugh at a child who takes herself too seriously. I made it to my car before I let myself feel angry. The drive back to Quantico was 93 minutes of hands gripped tight on the steering wheel and careful breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they taught you in officer candidate school when you were 22, and learning how to lead people who might die following your orders. By the time I pulled through the main gate, saluted the guard, and parked outside the headquarters building, I'd compartmentalized it all. The mockery, the dismissal, the unopened envelope. I'd locked it away in the same place I kept every other personal hurt, every other small betrayal. Nowhere that could interfere with the job. Captain Reeves was waiting in my office with coffee and a stack of briefing papers 3 inches thick. Walk me through it, I said, shrugging into my uniform blouse. We worked through the night. By 4 o'clock we had a plan. By 5:30 we had talking points. At 6 o'clock exactly, I was standing at the main gate in full dress blues when the congressional delegation's vehicles arrived. 3 senators, 2 representatives, a small army of aides and security personnel. Senator Patricia Vance stepped out of the lead vehicle and extended her hand. Colonel Stinson, thank you for accommodating us on such short notice. Senator, welcome to Marine Corps Base Quantico. The tour took 4 hours. I walked them through the training facility where the incident had occurred. Showed them our safety protocols. Explained in excruciating detail the difference between a training accident and negligence. By hour 3, even the most skeptical aide was nodding along. I have to say, Colonel, Senator Vance said as we stood in the simulation center, this is not what I expected. What did you expect, ma'am? Defensiveness, excuses. Instead, you've given us transparency and accountability. That's refreshing. It's my job, Senator. She studied me for a moment. How long have you been in command here? 8 months, ma'am. And before that? Battalion commander at Camp Lejeune, executive officer at Paris Island, various staff positions. Impressive, she glanced at her watch. I hate to cut this short, but I have a dinner engagement in Georgetown at 1900. A constituents' anniversary party. Big donors, you know how it is. Something cold slid down my spine. Anniversary party? 40th anniversary, the Harrisons. Do you know them? I knew them. I knew them because Harrison was my mother's maiden name. Because Mitchell's father-in-law was a major donor to Senator Vance's campaign. Because the universe had a sick sense of humor. I said carefully. What restaurant? The Copper Mill. Apparently it's... Colonel, are you all right? I was already moving. Captain Reeves! He appeared at my elbow. Ma'am? Get the senator's office a full after-action report by end of business Monday, and arrange transportation back to D.C. for the delegation. Yes, ma'am. I turned to Senator Vance. Ma'am, if you don't mind, I'd like to accompany you to that dinner. She blinked. I suppose that would be fine. But don't you need to? It won't take long, I said. I have something to deliver. The copper mill looked exactly the same as it had 24 hours earlier. Same Edison bulbs, same wood paneling, same soft murmur of expensive conversation. I walked in wearing full dress blues. Medals from 3 combat deployments. Ribbons from a career spent in places most people only saw on the news. The Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with a gold star, the Bronze Star, every piece of hardware I'd earned with blood and sacrifice pinned precisely in place. The hostess's eyes went wide. Can I help you? I'm with Senator Vance's party. Oh, Oh, right this way. I followed her through the dining room. Heads turned, conversations stuttered to a halt. A Marine Corps colonel in dress blues was not subtle. And there, in the private dining room in the back, was my family. All of them. Mitchell and his wife, Bethany and her husband, Mom and Dad. And at the head of the table, holding court with a rocks glass of whiskey, Mitchell's father-in-law, Gerald Harrison. They saw me at the exact same moment. Bethany's mouth fell open, Mitchell's face went white. Mom set down her fork with a soft clink. Senator Vance swept into the room behind me, all political charm and perfectly practiced warmth. Gerald, Patricia, David, thank you so much for the invitation. She paused, seeming to notice the frozen tableau for the first time. Oh, I hope I'm not late. I brought a colleague. Colonel Stinson and I were just finishing up some business at Quantico. Dead silence. Colonel, Gerald said slowly, I wasn't aware. We haven't been formally introduced, I said. My voice was steady, professional. But I believe I know your daughter-in-law's family. All eyes swung to Mitchell. Kyra? Dad's voice cracked on my name. What are you? You're a... Colonel, I said, United States Marine Corps. Installation commander at Quantico? I've held the position for 8 months. Senator Vance laughed, delighted. You didn't tell me you had family here, Colonel. Gerald, you must be so proud. Do you know what she's accomplished? I just spent 4 hours touring her base. The operation she runs is extraordinary. Gerald Harrison, major Republican donor and man who controlled half the commercial real estate in Northern Virginia, looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Because he hadn't. Not really. None of them had. I didn't know, Gerald said faintly. Mitchell never mentioned. I don't really talk about it, I said. I looked directly at my brother. Some people find it boring. Logistics, you know. Nothing important. Mitchell looked like he might vomit. Well, Senator Vance said, checking her phone, I'm afraid I can only stay for a quick drink. But Colonel, thank you again for your hospitality today. Gerald, we should discuss that development project soon. She swept away, leaving a vacuum of silence in her wake. Mom was the first to find her voice. Kyra, we didn't. No, I smiled. I know you didn't know. I've been trying to tell you for 24 years, but it's hard to get a word in when everyone's so certain they already understand. You're a colonel, Bethany said. She sounded dazed. You command a base. Quantico, I said. 6,000 personnel, 9,300 acres, home of the FBI Academy, the DEA Training Academy, and the Officer Candidate School, among other things. Dad's hand shook as he reached for his water glass. The ceremony yesterday, when you said you had to leave. Congressional delegation, national news story, minor crisis that needed the installation commander's immediate attention. I paused. It worked out. The crisis, I mean. Sometimes things work out when you have the right systems in place, when you have people you can trust. I let that land. Why didn't you tell us? Mom's eyes were wet. I tried, many times, but every conversation ended the same way, with you feeling sorry for me, with everyone agreeing that I was wasting my life, that I had nothing real, nothing permanent. I looked around the room. This seemed easier. Easier, Mitchell repeated. His voice was hollow. Then fighting you on your assumptions? Yes. Then trying to convince you that my career mattered? Definitely. I straightened my uniform jacket. But I'm done with easy. I'm done letting you believe whatever comfortable lie helps you sleep at night. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd left on the empty chair last night. Set it on the table in front of Dad. Happy anniversary, I said. It's a donation to the Marine Corps Scholarship Fund. In your names. $50,000. Bethany made a small, choked sound. I was going to give it to you last night, but you were busy toasting yourselves. So I left it there, on the empty chair, where you didn't look. I smiled, and it felt like glass. Funny how that works. How people don't see what they're not looking for. I turned to leave. Kyra, wait! Dad stood up. His face was gray. Please, let me. Say what? That you're proud? That you're sorry? I shook my head. Keep it, Dad. I don't need it anymore. I stopped needing your approval around the same time I made Major. That's not fair, Mom said. We love you. I know you do. But love without respect is just pity, and I'm done being pitied. I walked out of the private dining room, through the main restaurant, past the stairs and whispers, out into the cool evening air where my driver was waiting with the staff car. "Back to base, ma'am?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go home." The fallout took weeks. Mom called 17 times in the first 3 days. I answered on the 18th call, and we had a conversation that lasted 4 hours and left us both crying. She didn't apologize right away. She tried to explain, to justify, to make it make sense. I let her. And then, quietly, I told her what it felt like. To spend 2 decades serving your country, leading Marines in combat, making decisions that meant life or death, and then sit at a dinner table while your family laughed about your little job. She broke somewhere in the middle of that. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "Kyra, baby, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said. "That's the point, Mom. You never asked." Bethany texted me a novel-length apology that started with, "I don't expect you to forgive me," and ended with, "I'll do better." I texted back, "Okay." That was it, just okay. Because forgiveness wasn't a light switch, trust wasn't a light switch, they were muscles. Habits. Things you rebuilt slowly, carefully, with proof and time. Mitchell never reached out. 3 weeks after the dinner, I got an email from his wife, Lauren. "He's ashamed," she wrote. "He knows he can't take back what he said, but he wants you to know he's working on himself. He's seeing a therapist. He's trying to understand why he needed to believe you were failing." I read it twice, then filed it away. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. Maybe not. Either way, I wasn't holding my breath. Dad, though. Dad surprised me. He showed up at Quantico unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. The guard at the gate called my office, uncertain. "Ma'am, there's a Mr. Stinson here. Says he's your father. Should I?" "Send him through." He arrived in my office 20 minutes later, looking small and old in a way I'd never noticed before. Looking at my office, the flags, the commendations, the photos of me with generals and senators and foreign dignitaries, like he was seeing a stranger's life. "I'm sorry," he said, no preamble, no excuses, for all of it, for not seeing you, for not listening, for making you feel like you had to hide who you were just to avoid our judgment. I sat behind my desk, hands folded. "Okay. That's it, okay?" "What do you want me to say, Dad? That it didn't hurt?" "It did. That I'm over it? I'm not." I leaned back in my chair. "But I'm also not interested in punishing you. I'm just tired. I'm tired of performing for people who won't see me anyway." He nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you keep coming? To the dinners, the holidays, all of it. If we made you feel that bad, why didn't you just stop?" I thought about that. "Because you're my family. Because I kept hoping that maybe, someday, you'd ask the right question. You'd see past your assumptions long enough to notice who I actually was." I shrugged. "And because cutting you off felt like admitting defeat. And now? Now I don't care about winning anymore. I just care about being known." He sat with that for a long moment. Then, "Can I know you now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Can you?" "I'd like to try." So we tried. It was awkward and halting and sometimes painful. He came to Quantico twice more, sat through a change of command ceremony where I stood on a parade deck in front of 3,000 Marines and passed authority to my replacement, watched me give orders and receive salutes, and command respect with a gesture. At the end of the ceremony, when the speeches were done and the formations had broken up, he found me by my staff car. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I should have said it a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you, Kyra." I looked at him, at his wet eyes and trembling hands, at the man who'd raised me and dismissed me and, now, finally, seen me. "Thank you," I said. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. 6 months later, I pinned on my first star. Mom and Dad came to the ceremony. Bethany came with her husband and kids. Mitchell sent flowers and a card that said simply, "Congratulations, General. You earned this." I stood in front of a room full of Marines, senior officers, and Pentagon officials, while a 2-star general pinned the star to my collar. The weight of it was strange, heavy and light at the same time. Afterward, at the reception, Mom pulled me aside. "You look happy," she said. "I am. Not because of us." "No," I said, "not because of you." She nodded. "Good. That's how it should be. Your happiness shouldn't depend on us finally getting our heads out of our asses." I laughed, surprised. "Mom!" "I mean it. You've built something extraordinary, Kyra, with or without our support. And I'm sorry it took us so long to see it, but I'm glad we finally did." I hugged her then, held her tight for a long moment. "Me too." "Are you going to keep talking to us?" she asked when we pulled apart. "Now that you don't need us to validate you?" "Do you want me to?" "Yes," she said fiercely. "Yes. I want to know you, Kyra. All of you. Not the version we invented. Not the daughter we thought we had. The woman you actually are. That might take a while. I have time." So we rebuilt, slowly, carefully, with honesty instead of assumptions, with questions instead of judgments. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still echoes of the old patterns. But there was also something new. Something real. Respect. And that, it turned out, was worth more than all the apologies in the world. I didn't need them to validate my choices anymore. Didn't need them to understand the weight of command or the cost of leadership. I just needed them to see me, to acknowledge that the life I'd built, the life they'd dismissed as rootless and small, was mine. Nothing more needed to be said.